Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast, inspiring real women with a passion for fishing and the outdoors to go get their adventure on. Now, here's your host, coming to you from the Lance Chuck Camper Mobile Podcast Studio, Master Captain Angie Scott.
Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast. So I had another amazing guest lined up for y'all this week. But due to a very recent groundbreaking event, we're going to go ahead and hold off on that for just one more week. And trust me, it's going to be well worth the wait because this guest is about to make some major history and I cannot wait to be the first to share it with y'all. So right before the 4th of July weekend, I had to throw an audible and figure out what to do for this week's episode release. I decided to get a little personal with y'all and do another rare solo episode. But what do I do it on? I thought about sharing some notes from a recent presentation I gave for the Artemis Sportswomen Bass Tactics program on seasonal water temperature and catching bass year-round. But then I thought, if you guys want all that info, all you need to do is enroll in the program and watch the Zoom meeting recordings. It's only $5 and it goes to help support a great organization. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes if you guys want to check that out. So I was thinking on it, and Saturday morning it hit me. I was really inspired by my guest on last week's episode, Angie Marie from the Hormone Hacker, where she shared with us tips for outdoor athletes and hobbyists to get outdoors comfortably while on their periods, the changing ebb and flow through a menstrual cycle, products to help manage your period during those long outdoor days, and why you simply just shouldn't ignore your period, and much, much more. We ended up getting a lot of amazing feedback from this episode, I think mostly because it's a topic that isn't often openly talked about, and why it isn't, since nearly half the population has to deal with this for the majority of their lives, I'm not sure. But we got some feedback too from you female listeners out there who are lucky enough to already be past this stage in your lives and don't have to worry about it anymore. But the topic I'm going to talk about this week kind of piggybacks off that, and it does affect all women no matter what stage of life you're in. And it sort of kind of leads up nicely to the quote-unquote secret episode I'm holding out on you guys for next week. So I'll leave you to wonder about that in the meantime, but let's get into it. So this topic isn't exactly fishing or outdoor adventure related, but it really kind of is when you get down to it. Now, we've talked about health and fitness on the show in the past. I've had certain guests on, like Tom Rowland, when we did the 10,000 push-up challenge to support Captains for Clean Waters back in February. And it's a topic that naturally comes up through the lifespan of the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast because it is an important pillar of all our lives. I mean, if we want to have the energy and the stamina to continue to do what we do in the outdoors well into our 70s, 80s, or even our 90s, and who wouldn't, health and fitness needs to be a major focus of our lives as outdoors women, especially if you're going to be doing any kind of a competitive outdoor sports like tournament fishing and shooting sports. As I mentioned in the past, this has been a struggle my entire life, and like many others, the pandemic didn't really help me to make huge strides in the right direction. So my conversation with Angie last week from the Hormone Hacker hit a little spark. I never really thought about how much our hormones play a part in our ability to lose or gain weight. I've always just tried to follow the standard diet programs everybody knows about, from like eating less and exercising more, doing a no carb or low carb plan, keto, paleo, vegan, on and on. I've done all the programs like Beachbody, Optavia, or however you say that, Weight Watchers, Nutrisystem, you pretty much name it. Most of these programs take into account little or no account of female hormones. And if they play such a big role in our bodies, why are they being ignored? So I did a little research. This is especially important to me as I just recently turned 44, and I've noticed that anytime I've tried to make changes in my diet and exercise, I'm seeing very little progress, and it can be very frustrating. And it hasn't been, honestly, a huge focus with being so busy with work, keeping up with the podcast, fishing tournaments. I'm get pretty distracted. So I'm really looking forward to something specifically tailored to someone in my stage of life to really maximize the effectiveness and use of my time. It seems most of the health and nutrition and exercise information we receive still to this day is all science and research that's still very much male-based. Very little is done primarily solely focused on the female body. So after doing some more online research, I happened to stumble across a 12-week program designed by a guy named Dr. Jade Teta to optimize the female metabolism by determining your very own hormone type, and then a diet and exercise program tailored to your specific type. Obviously, whatever your type ends up being isn't the Bible because we're constantly changing, but the idea is that it gives you a really good starting point, and as you gradually work your way through, you start to see what works well and what doesn't by tracking a bunch of different factors weekly that are already pre-laid out on a spreadsheet for you, so you can easily see week by week where you're improving and where you might not be improving. And it might sound really complicated, but it turns out it's actually very simple. The program claims that women have a powerful, untapped metabolic advantage, which we can harness to transform our bodies in positive ways by following the diet and exercise routine that's recommended in this program for your specific hormone type. In South Dakota, hunting is our shared legacy, something everyone can be a part of. That's why we're focused on making our fields a welcome place for everyone. See how at huntthegreatestsd.com, where you can hear stories from sportswomen and learn what makes South Dakota the world's pheasant capital. While you're there, check out public land maps, hunting blogs, and season information for one unforgettable fall. Learn more at huntthegreatestsd.com. So I feel like I might be starting to sound a little salesy here, but rest assured I'm not at all. I'm just passing along this information. I'm not affiliated with this program, which happens to be called Metabolic Renewal in any sort of way. It just all finally is starting to kind of make sense to me. And after sticking with it for just a little over, not even a week now, I can already start to see some small changes starting to take place. So the entire 12-week program at the time I purchased it was only $37. So it's not like it was a huge investment, but I feel like hopefully it will be a huge investment in my health and future. So of course they'll try to sell you supplements like protein powders and some other things, but of course you can find very high quality protein powder anywhere if you decide that you want to have a shake for breakfast or whatever, which they do recommend, but they also give you alternative breakfast ideas with this program. So they also have a pretty big private Facebook group for people that are going through the program, and I found that to be very supportive, and I've gotten a lot of great info out of the group already as well. Anyway, to get started, you simply go online, you take the quiz, determine your hormone type, and again, it's not the end-all be-all by any means, but it gives you a really solid place to start. Mine seemed to be right on. I got hormone type 3, so the characteristics of type 3 is they are wired and tired, a strong type A personality who try to do it all and never back down from a challenge. Women of this type can often have trouble falling asleep or sleeping through the night and may feel low energy or lethargic. Or adrenaline kicks in and they feel a wired anxious buzzing inside. It's easy for type 3s to pack on fat around the stomach and midsection and have a more apple-shaped body. So that was pretty all much spot on for me. So right off the bat, I was like, hey, this, they know what they're talking about here. So I'm following the suggestions to eat and exercise to optimize my hormones. And a big part of that is also scheduling in periods of rest and reducing stress as much as possible, as that's a big part of the problem, as increased levels of cortisol, which is one of the hormones produced by excess stress tends to lead to that extra weight around the midsection. Anyway, I'm finding it all very interesting. I actually had my wife Dana take the quiz as well. She's a little older than I am, and she started menopause at a very young age for menopause. And so she was not in the same hormone type as me, not surprisingly. She ended up being hormone type 6. And again, when we read the description, everything was spot on with what she's been experiencing. So as we do the program together, we're able to make the necessary tweaks to tailor it to each other's specific needs as to where we're at. Obviously, the lifestyle extends beyond the 12 weeks, but the idea of it is that you learn how to listen to your body as it continues to evolve and change as you age, and you can make the necessary adjustments to ensure that you're always maximizing your hormones and keeping yourself in the best zone for you. So the timing here is pretty great because I had a goal to drop some weight before the LBA Classic, which we leave for mid-October. And then I also have my annual physical exam scheduled with my primary physician at the end of September. So 2 pretty big things coming up to kind of help me keep accountable and on the right track throughout this 12-week program and then beyond. Oh, and one tool I wanted to mention, if you are at all interested in this program or finding something similar to try to get your hormones on track and working in a positive way for you, there's a great tracking app I discovered through the Metabolic Renewal Facebook group that I mentioned that a lot of ladies use, and it's called Me360. It uses your phone's camera to take a scan of your body, both a front view and a side view, and then it comes back with sort of like a mannequin-looking image of your body shape, and it gives you all your measurements. So no more taking that measuring tape and fumbling with it and trying to get it in just the right spot. I had already done that and taken my measurements before I did the scan with the app, and I couldn't believe how spot on they are. It was crazy. Who knew we would have technology like this at some point? There were a couple measurements that were off, like my upper arms were a few inches off for some reason. I figure, it can't be perfect, but it was close enough to where I was pretty darn impressed. So you can take a scan like once a week and compare your progress both with the measurements, also visually side by side by comparing that image that it spits out. And so I thought that was pretty darn cool. I had, like I said, no idea anything like that existed. Anyway, that's all I really got. That kind of wraps it up. I'm just going to keep up with this program, and I'll give you some updates along the way. I would love to hear any feedback from you if you're interested in getting started in something like this or doing it with me, or if I can help you in any way, we can keep each other accountable. Message me on Instagram at The Woman Angler or on Facebook, or shoot me an email at Angie@thewomanangler.com. I'll put links to all this in the show notes. And again, like I said, I'm in no way affiliated with this program or app that I mentioned. These are just things that I've come across that seem to make sense to me, especially at this stage in my life as a middle-aged woman, and I'm excited to see how it works for me. I'm also excited as I continue toward my goal to lose weight and get ready for the LBA Classic on Logan Martin in October. And I'm also extremely excited for next week's episode. I'm telling y'all, this is history in the making. Do not miss it. Thanks always for listening and coming along for me on this journey. We'll see you next week.